culture and local wisdom during the Ayutthaya period. The unique culture and local wisdom of the Ayutthaya period has been passed on through its arts and cultures. The main factors are as follows. 1. An agrarian society. The kingdom of Ayutthaya was situated on the lowland of major rivers, so the majority of Ayutthayan people cultivated rice and other crops. They had adapted their lifestyles to the natural environment. The traditional houses had high, elevated basements to avoid flooding. There were also houseboats around the city of Ayutthaya. Boats were important vehicles for transportation. Because of the abundance of the waterways, people had traditions to do agricultural works in groups or teams. Construction of barns and dams, as well as other works, were done with team efforts. Some seasonal ceremonies, such as the Kwan Khao ceremony and the rainfall ceremony, were also group functions. 2. Ateravada Buddhist society. As a majority in the society were Theravada Buddhists, people tended to use Buddhist principles, being helping each other, forgiving and being patient. In their daily lives, their traditions and beliefs were related to Buddhism, especially the concept of karma, an action driven by intention, which leads to future consequences, and the concept of reincarnation. The current social statuses reflected the merits and demerits done in their previous lives. These Buddhist beliefs helped to keep the peace in the communities, and people from different social classes could live together peacefully. Those religious beliefs were the main reason why people from every social class had a strong faith in Buddhism. Many temples were constructed, religious objects were made, and offering food, necessities, and fun to monks were encouraged. As a result, Buddhism had flourished and monasteries became the center of arts and culture. 3. A multinational society. Thanks to its location and geographical features, Ayutthaya could be reached from all regions, either nearby or far away states. It was the commercial hub of Southeast Asia. Asian foreigners from such states as Laos, Mons, Khmers, Sham, Malaya, Persia, China, Japan, and India choose to settle down in Ayutthaya. That was also the case for Europeans from such countries as Portugal, Britain, the Netherlands, Spain, France, and Greece. As a result, different religions could be found across Ayutthaya, including Islam, Brahmanism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Buddhism. Everyone had freedom of religion and religious activities. Foreigners could work in the field they were good at. For example, they could work as merchants, physicians, hired sawyers, and governmental officials. These factors had made Ayutthaya into a multinational society with the mixture of Eastern and Western cultures. Arts. The arts of the Ayutthaya period were the accumulation that was inspired by the ancient cultures of Khmer, Sukhothai, and Lanna, and then was blended with local arts. This created the unique, beautiful, and elaborate characteristics of Ayutthaya art. There were various types of Ayutthaya art, including painting, sculpture, architecture, and fine arts. Painting. The paintings during the Ayutthaya kingdom reflected Buddhist beliefs. Unfortunately, they were mostly lost or destroyed. Painting during the early Ayutthaya period. Normally, the paintings from this period were drawn and painted in places of worship. For example, the main halls of monasteries and the vihara. This reflected the Khmer arts influences. The popular style of paintings during that time was the image of many Buddhas seated in many rows in the glass palace under the arch bodhi trees. Artists often used red, black, and yellow to paint. Sometimes they even decorated some parts of the painting with gold leaves, such as the mural painting inside the stupa of Wat Rashaburana in the city of Ayutthaya. Painting during the mid-Ayutthaya period. The influence of Sukhothai arts had replaced those of the Khmer during this period. There were also the mural paintings of Buddha. Other illustrations were often painted on the palm leaf books. Artists often painted with brighter hues. The decoration with gold leaves was not encouraged. The stories of the paintings were about the Traipumi, reflecting the Buddhist concept of the three worlds. These books were called as the Traipumi illustration books. Painting during the late Ayutthaya period. The paintings of this period were integrated and adapted with the local Ayutthaya culture. The paintings often illustrated the stories from the Jataka tales and inserted with the illustrations of the daily life of Ayutthaya commoners. Artists used more colorful and vivid colors to paint. The painting could also be found on the Buddhist scripture cabinets as well as in the palm leaf books. Sculpture. There were many sculptures built during this period. The most popular ones were the statues of Buddha. Those could be carved out of sandstones or cast in bronze or molded with plaster. The statues of Buddha in various mudras, gestures, depicted the stories of Buddha's life as Bodhisattva. Sculpture during the early Ayutthaya period. Some examples of this period were พระบุตรไตรรัตนนายกหลวงพ่อโต of วัดพระพนัญเชิง and Buddha statues found in the stupa of Wat Rashaburana. Stuccos were also used to decorate on architectural buildings. The most popular style of sculptural decorations was the Ganok Lopburi style stuccos. For example, these stuccos were decorated on the stupa of Wat Mahathat. Some of other popular styles were influenced by Chinese sculptural arts. Some of the examples can be found at Wat Mahathat in Ayutthaya. Sculptures during the mid-Ayutthaya period. The sculptures of this period had merged the artistic styles of Khmer and Sukhothai into a unique and authentic Ayutthaya style. This particular design started during the reign of Somdet พระรามาธิบดี II, Some of the examples are the statue of พระบุตรโลกนาถ which is now enshrined in the main vihara of วัดพระเชตุพนวิมลมังคาราราม ราชวรมหาวิหาร and the statue of sleeping Buddha in วัดขุนอินทประมูล and วัดป่าโมกอ่างทอง province. Sculpture during the late Ayutthaya period. The popular statues of this particular period were Buddha wearing the full or semi-royal attire of the king. The new type of Buddha gestures were created during the reign of สมเด็จพระเจ้าปราสาททอง called มหาชมพูบดีมุตรา Those statues were normally carved out of sandstone in the Khmer style. Architecture. Most buildings of the Ayutthaya period were often made of wood, so most of them had already decayed or had been destroyed. Only the architectural buildings related to Buddhism, such as temples, vihara, stupas, and jedi, survived due to the fact that they were usually made of bricks and laterite. Moreover, the architectural styles were changed through the time. Sculpture during the late Ayutthaya period. The popular statues of this particular period were Buddha wearing the full or semi-royal attire of the king. The new type of Buddha gestures were created. The new type of Buddha gestures were created during the reign of สมเด็จพระเจ้าปราสาททอง called มหาชมพูบดีมุตรา Those statues were normally carved out of sandstone in the Khmer style. Architecture. Most buildings of the Ayutthaya period were often made of wood, so most of them had already decayed or had been destroyed. Only the architectural buildings related to Buddhism, such as temples, vihara, stupas, and jedi, survived due to the fact that they were usually made of bricks and laterite. Moreover, the architectural styles were changed through the time. Architecture during the mid-Ayutthaya period. The architectural style of the Ubosot and Vihara did not change. However, in the case of the main building, the stupas had been changed to the round shape or the so-called Ceylonese style jedi, which were usually found in the Sukhothai period. For example, they are the jedi of Wat Phra Sri San Phet and the jedi of Wat Yai Chai Mongkhon. Architecture during the late Ayutthaya period. Due to the advancement of constructional technology during this period, in BE 2173, สมเด็จพระเจ้าปราสาททอง ordered the construction of the Wat Chai Watanaram by copying the design of the Angkor Wat, but made some adaptation to the Ayutthaya style. Also, a new type of jedi, changing from the round shape to the angular shape and called เจดีย์ย่อมุมไม้12 was invented and constructed at วัดชุมพลนิกายาราม เกาะบางปะอิน district Ayutthaya. The European architectural style was spread to Ayutthaya from France during the reign of King Narai the Great. King Louis XIV of France had sent his architects and engineers to Ayutthaya. Therefore, the Ayutthaya architectures were artistically inspired by the unique Gothic arches. Some example could be seen today at the King Narai's Palace, Mueang Bangkok Fortress, and the residence prepares for the royal visitors in Lopburi. Fine arts. Such works as wood carving, ลายรดน้ำ drawing, the mother of pearl inlay on the benjerong wares, Thai porcelains, new loaves, and gold works were authentic highlights and identities of Ayutthaya fine arts. Wood carving. The examples of Ayutthaya wood carving works were the door frame of Jedi Sam Ong at Wat Prasi Sanpet, in which the angle was holding a sacred dagger with a parasol above his head, and it was built during the reign of Somdet Phra Ramathipadi IV, and the door frame of Wat Vihan Thong in Ayutthaya. Other examples are the wooden figurines of Buddha decorated with the 5-level dome, currently placed at the Buddha footprint in Saraburi, and the lacquered wood sculpture cabinets, currently placed at the National Library of Thailand in Bangkok. The mother of pearl inlay. It was a new type of the fine arts invented during this period. The antique marquetry and the mother of pearl inlay works that still survive until today were the pearl inlaid panels of Marshal Admiral Paribatra Sukhumpan, Prince of Nakhon Sawan's bookshelf, currently placed at the National Gallery, Bangkok, the cabinets at the National Library of Thailand, and the door frame of Sermon Hall of Wat Pa Mo in Ang Thong, Benjerong wares. They were Thai-style porcelains glazed in 5 different colors. During the Ayutthaya period, the popular decorative designs were the Lai Gan Got and Lai Gan Yang. There were 2 types of niloware, which were the black niloware and the gold niloware, with floral patterns. Some examples of the ornaments made from gold were the golden amulet, the royal golden plates, and the golden crowns. Performing arts. According to the evidence, the most favorite types of performing arts during this period were the khon, classical mask dance, and nang yai, shadow puppet play. Another type was called the Lakowan, a type of classical dances. There were 3 subcategories of the Lakowan dances, including Lakon Chatri, Lakon Nok, and Lakon Nai. In addition, there were other types of performing arts such as Ram or Rabam, dancing, Sepa, poetry, recitation, puppetry, singing, and Sakawa, poetry, recitation. Music. There were historical records from the Ayutthaya period about the classical ensemble called the Mahori. It was the traditional Thai ensemble comprising of 4 kinds of Thai musical instruments, which include a plucked string instrument, a string instrument, a percussion instrument, and a woodwind instrument. According to some evidence, during the reign of King Narai the Great, Pi Chanai was added to the ensemble so that the total number of instruments in each band became 5. When playing together, Klui, a type of Thai flute, would replace Pi Chanai. Later, with the musical development over time, more instruments were slowly added into an ensemble one by one. Thai songs during the Ayutthaya period were in forms of poetry, recitation, lullabies, and folk songs, singing along the instruments with no crooning and with the classic two-layer rhythm singing. This was normally called in Thai as the complete lyrical song or the Mebot song. It was later modified into the classical three-layer rhythm singing and the Tao singing during the Ratanakosin period. Language and literature. Language. The historical evidence of Thai language used during this period could be found in literatures, annals, chronicles, and archives. One of the most important written records on the Thai language was the Jindamani, written by Prahoratipadi during the reign of King Narai the Great. It was the first textbook on Thai language and literature used during the Ayutthaya period. The contents in the textbook consisted of vocabularies, Sanskrit root words, and homonyms. The use of Sosala, Sabarisi, and Sosua, the 20 words that use Maimuan, the three-pitch groups of alphabets, groups of final letters, symbols, and poetry. It has influenced many later generations of scholars and was used as a model text for other textbooks for Thai language as well as Thai prosody and versification. Literature. The ruling class of the Ayutthaya society, including the monarchs, authors, poets, sages, and scholars, had created many great literary works. Prominent poets during this period were Si Prat, พระมหาราชครูพระโหราธิปดีพระศรีมโหสถ and Prince Thammatibate เจ้าฟ้ากุ้ง There were many splendid types of poetry which were Lilith, โคลง ฉัน กาบ กลอน เพลงยาว and โคลงเบ็ดเตล็ด Those literary works indicated the cultural creativities of local Thai wisdom during the Ayutthaya period. Literature during the early Ayutthaya period. Most literary works of this period were often related to Buddhism. The main purpose was to tie up the monarchy to Buddhism in order to increase the faith and loyalty of the subjects towards the monarchical institution. The creation of Lilith องค์การแช่งน้ำ was written for Brahman priests to chant during the royal water consecration ceremony, nobles taking the oath of alliance to the king. It contains magical spells inviting gods and other supernatural spirits to witness the event, to curse the conspirators and traitors, and to bless and praise the royalist. Another literary work that shared the same purpose with the former one was Lilith Yuan Pai, poetically narrating and praising the greatness of King Tailokanath on his military victories over other kings. Literature during the mid-Ayutthaya period. After King Naresuan the Great of Ayutthaya successfully declared independence and united the kingdom and become stable and peaceful, literature has flourished once again. During the rule of Somdet Prasong Tham, most literary works during his reign were about Buddhism. One of the examples was called Kap Mahachat, a poetic epic inserted with some Pali words. The reign of King Narai the Great was considered as the golden age of Thai literature. Some prominent works during his reign were Samut Tharakot Kamchan, โครงทศรถสอนพระราม โครงพาลีสอนน้อง and โครงราชสวัสดิ์ All of those works aim to raise and boost the good consciousness in duties and responsibilities of noblemen and administrative officials. Thai literature and literary works of the mid-Ayutthaya period had lesser strict rules, contents, and patterns than those works in the early Ayutthaya period. The use of language was simpler, reducing the use of Pali and Sanskrit vocabularies. Some important prose were also written during this period, such as chronicles and the Chindamani text. Literature during the late Ayutthaya period. During this period, there were both poetry and prose related to Buddhism, entertainment, and wide range of academic fields. Most literary works were writing during the reign of King Boromagot. Not only was that he a great poet himself, but some of his sons and daughters were also excellent and high-rated poets. One of his brilliant poet children was Prince Thammatibet, who composed Nantopa Nantasut Kamluang, as well as Pamarai Kamluang. His most prominent works were written in the form of Gap He, narrating the royal boats, washing fish, and lamenting about his love. His unique writing style set the model pattern of those Gap He written in the next period. During the end of Ayutthaya period, people tended to compose stories in the form of play. Some examples were Da Lang, written by Jao Fa Gunathon, and Inao, composed by Jao Fa Mongkut, who were both King Baromagot's daughter. Both of those stories were loosely based on the Java tales. In addition, there were other plays that were also adapted from foreign tales such as Ramagyan, Sang Thong, and Pikun Thong. There was only one work written in the form of Chan, which was Bunnawat Kamchan, composed by monk Phra Mahanak of Wat Tha Sai. The purpose was to support and worship Buddhism by writing poems. His style of poetic writing has influenced next generations of poets such as King Rama III of Ratanakosin.